We are talking Carver, a 2015 Halloween-themed slasher from director Emily DePrimo, who also co-wrote this with Ron DePrimo, which I'm assuming is her father. And why do I say that? Well, this movie is notable for the director being just 14 years old when she directed and co-wrote this. And that's the kind of the unique selling point, I suppose, of this movie. It's effectively a I Know What You Did Last Summer style slasher movie. So maybe I Know What You Did Last Halloween, I guess, is maybe a more an apt description. And let's talk about this director then, Emily DePrimo. So yes, 14 whilst directed this movie. Now, how to judge a movie when it's directed by a 14-year-old? I'm going to say it's worth mentioning because we have to give credit where credit is due for a director getting a movie made or produced at such a young age. I suspect it was obviously pushed through by her family, clearly, but nonetheless, it's a very impressive achievement for someone so young. But I am gonna not let that affect my rating of this movie, because I don't think it's fair to a viewer to effectively give a movie a pass for any critiques I might have just because the director is so young, because I don't think Joe Schmo off the street is going to care or even know that that was an issue. So it is worth mentioning, and I think it's an impressive feat for someone so young, but that's not what we're going to be judging the movie on. We're simply going to be judging it on its own merits. So let's talk about the plot. As I've mentioned, I think this is very akin to I Know What You Did Last Summer. We have a group of kids when they were young, I think probably around 8 years old, something like that. And they bully this young boy and girl, and this young boy and girl eventually fall down this hole in the middle of the woods. And this group of kids just leave them there because they don't want to get in trouble. And cut to, I think it's 8 years later, and now this kind of same group of kids are now teenagers graduating high school. The kind of the main bully, I suppose, is the head football guy. I don't really know about American football. And there seems to be a rash of killings with a pumpkin-faced slasher seemingly killing anyone who was even associated with this group of now teenagers for this kind of tragic incident that happened some years ago. Now, what will happen? Who is the killer? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss. So it is very much a somewhat paint-by-numbers slasher movie. But that being said, I think slasher fans, it's really kind of made with that genre in mind, and I think fans of the slasher genre, it's really catered for them. You have a masked killer in somewhat of a cumbersome outfit, it must be said, but nonetheless, it looks spooky, killing off victims one by one and in various kind of bloody ways. There's lots of kind of practical fake blood spurting out here. So that was kind of interesting to see. And there's a relatively kind of high body count. I think the killer, as I say, although it's somewhat impractical, I think the kind of the costume kind of looks fun. And it is themed for Halloween, and these victims, these young kids, when they were in the prologue, were carving pumpkins and stuff. So there is that kind of through line. The cast is obviously mainly kind of young people. They do have an attempt here to try and have a few discontenting voices within this kind of group of bullies. Some who simply try to forget it, some who try to make amends to a certain degree, and some who feel very guilty. So there is a little bit of an attempt here to have some nuance within this kind of group. And one of the interesting things here is the killer, obviously, who is targeting this specific group of people. That being said, anyone else who comes in orbit also really has the same kind of fate here. So it is a killer who is somewhat targeted, but it will also happily kill other people as well. So it makes for a dangerous kind of killer here. There's also another element that's added on when we kind of, I guess, get the origin of this killer, that adds a kind of another element of quite dark backstory and you know, a different type of horror, I suppose, to the movie, as we learn more about, you know, the circumstances of why this killer is doing what they are doing. So the pacing is quite good. It's not a long film, so it is kind of quick pace. As I said, there's multiple victims here. So again, it's never too long until you're kind of getting sort of another attack. The movie does try to have a little bit of a mystery in regards to plot reveals. Obviously, even though you can probably guess the broad strokes of the story here, it does try to have at least some misdirect and kind of red herrings and things like that within the movie. And again, I think the budget here was around $30,000. So it looks relatively kind of well produced in regards to simply its technical elements. Cinematography, although not outstanding, it's all fine here. Sound design, etc., etc. I think all are, you know, at least on a serviceable level. But it runs at, as I say, a fairly kind of brisk pace. So I think, generally speaking, the mechanics of the film, I think, seem fairly kind of strong. So what doesn't work? It's so just generic in regards to a slasher movie. I mean, outside of the novelty of having a director so young, you know, there's nothing on screen. I don't think it really kind of separates this movie in any kind of particular way. The story is reminiscent of I Know What You Did Last Summer. As I've mentioned, the killer is kind of Halloween themed. We've seen kind of plenty of them. But there are a couple of detractors here, I would say. So first of all, I think the acting is on the weaker side, generally speaking. There are a few performances that are fine, but there are some weaker performances here. And I think, and I hate to say it, but a lot of these are the child actors. I've got to be honest with you, these are not strong child actors. Now, it is a low-budget movie, and we probably haven't got child actors who have had, you know, gone through a lot of training and stuff, because it's a low-budget indie. But it is what it is, you know. Unfortunately, the child acting isn't good, and we get a fairly kind of long prologue where we have a whole bunch of kind of child actors. I think some of the just the steps in the movie's plot seem just a little bit, even though there are some nuanced kind of characters, I suppose, what the movie lacks in nuance, though, is just how the plot progresses, and it's very clunky and obvious about the next steps, where everyone's going. You can kind of like pick holes in sort of the logic and how people just seem to end up in some convenient spots with at convenient sort of times and things like that, really, that just seem, you know, it's not trying to necessarily to be a particularly realistic slasher exactly, but it's just the sort of the mechanics of the story just seem a little bit contrived and convenient at sort of points in the movie. I have to say, I think the idea here of trying to have a little bit of a reveal and this kind of like misdirect, so to speak, it tries a little bit too hard with that to a certain degree, and I think it ends up thinking it's being clever, but I think it ends up causing this more logical problem the more you think about it. I have to say, it's at the very end of the movie is the final kind of act, is what I would say, the final sort of act on screen. I don't really understand what they were trying to go for there in regards to, is this some type of last attempt at vengeance? But it didn't really, I don't think that really works if you think about it too much. Now, I've mentioned there's lots of practical blood, but the kills, if you're a fan who wants lots of variety and lots of inventive kills, that ain't here. It's just really people getting killed with a hand scythe, and that's basically it. So lots of kind of splurting blood, but it's just ultimately kind of people getting stabbed and no real, you know, inventiveness in regards to that sort of stuff. So I think this movie is okay if you want just a run-of-the-mill slasher film. It's fine if you want that sort of stuff, but there are a few elements that I think just take it from being what would have been an average slasher movie to slightly below average without necessarily being really bad or anything. But like, as I say, some of the acting here, some of the kind of like the rudimentary choices in regards to story make this a 4 out of 10 for me. So have you seen this? What did you think of it? Please leave me a comment and I shall look forward to you next time.